For years, you have been trying everything, haven't you? The meditation apps, the magnesium supplements, cutting out caffeine after noon, and still you wake up at 3 a.m. with your heart hammering against your ribs. You feel that low-grade hum of anxiety all day, that sense of irritability that makes you feel like a stranger in your own skin. You think it must be you. You think you're failing at stress management, failing at aging gracefully. I'm here to tell you something that should have been said to you a decade ago. You are not failing. You were never told the truth about what was happening to you after 50. The real issue isn't your habits. It's a hormone you were told was only for periods and pregnancy. A hormone that drops by over 95% after your last period, and with it, your brain's ability to feel calm. Look, the most common belief about progesterone is not just wrong. It has left a generation of women suffering needlessly, and the silence around it is a clinical failure, not a personal one. In the United States, nearly 80% of OBGYN residents admit they don't feel adequately trained to manage menopause. So it's no surprise that the story you were told was incomplete. You were told progesterone is just a shield for your uterus if you take estrogen, a plumbing accessory you can just discard. That is a dangerous half-truth. And that half-truth ignores its most vital role as a powerful calming agent for your entire nervous system. The real story isn't about your uterus at all. It's about your brain. And if you stick with me, I am going to explain the precise neurochemical reason why you haven't been able to sleep and why the silence on this topic has been so profound. What you're about to understand will change how you see your body forever. This silence wasn't an accident. It was built, piece by piece, over decades. It started with a single catastrophic misunderstanding back in 2002. The Women's Health Initiative study, the largest of its kind, sent a shockwave of fear through the entire medical world. But here is the part that got lost in the panic. The study didn't use the progesterone your body actually makes. It used a synthetic chemical imposter, a progestin called Provera, that has a different molecular structure and different effects on a woman's body. In the aftermath, a whole generation of doctors was trained in fear, not physiology. They were taught that all hormones were risky, and progesterone was just a necessary evil to protect the uterus. The nuance was lost. The science was buried, and women were simply taken off everything, left to navigate the single biggest hormonal shift of their lives with nothing but a pat on the back and a suggestion to think positive. That clinical fear then seeped into our homes. Think about your mother's generation. What did they call it? The change, a quiet, whispered phrase. They didn't have the language for the sleepless nights, the sudden anxiety, the feeling of their own body turning on them. They were told it was bad nerves or melancholy. They were given tranquilizers, not truth. They were expected to endure it with a kind of quiet dignity, and so they never spoke of it. They couldn't teach you what they were never taught themselves. And because they were silent, your friends were silent, and you were silent, all of you thinking you were the only one, all of you trying to meditate your way through a neurochemical crisis. That silence was passed down to you, an inheritance nobody wanted. Tell me in the comments, what did your mother call menopause? I read every one, because those stories matter. So you walk into a doctor's office today, a doctor who likely graduated right in the middle of that post-WHI fog, and you say, I can't sleep, I feel anxious all the time. And they run the standard script, because it's the only one they were given. They check your thyroid. They ask about your stress levels. They might offer you a sleeping pill or an antidepressant. In 30 years of practice, I have seen this exact pattern thousands of times. It is a systemic failure that plays out in individual lives, in your life, because what that outdated script misses isn't just a minor detail. It misses the single most powerful calming agent your brain has ever known. It misses the entire reason you feel this way. And in a moment, I am going to explain exactly how that agent works and what its absence is doing to your nervous system right now. Let's be clear about who failed you, because it wasn't one person. It was a cascade of systemic failures. First, the medical training systems that, for 20 years, taught a whole generation of doctors to fear hormones, but failed to teach them the crucial difference between a synthetic progestin, like MPA, the one used in that infamous study, and the bioidentical progesterone your body actually knows how to use. They were taught gynecology, not neuroscience. Then you have the wellness industry, a multi-billion-dollar machine that thrives in that exact gap of knowledge. It happily sold you magnesium supplements, sleep meditations, and herbal tinctures, all while knowing, or choosing to ignore, that they were like using a bucket to stop a flood. These were temporary fixes for a problem that was never about your habits in the first place. And the stakes couldn't be more different. For those systems, the silence is profitable. It's stable. It keeps things simple. But for you, the price of that silence is measured in years of your life. It's measured in sleepless nights, in strained relationships, in the feeling that you are losing your own mind. Up to 60% of women in menopause report the exact same sleep disturbances you're experiencing. That is not a coincidence. It is a pattern. It's the direct result of a specific physiological event, the drop in progesterone from a cycling peak of up to 20 nanograms per milliliter down to less than 1 nanogram per milliliter after your last period. That is not aging. That is a hormone shift nobody explained to you. But the story gets even deeper, because it's not just the progesterone itself that holds the key to your calm. It's what your brain turns it into. And in a moment, I am going to introduce you to the master molecule your nervous system has been starving for. Let me explain what is actually happening in your body, because the progesterone itself is not even the final actor. Your brain takes that progesterone you've lost, and it performs a kind of neurochemical alchemy. It converts it into a powerful metabolite called allopregnanolone, and that is the molecule your nervous system has been starving for. Think of it like this. Allopregnanolone is the master key, and the lock is the most important calming receptor in your entire brain, the GABA A receptor. When you don't have enough of that key, the lock simply won't turn. Your brain's primary calm down and go to sleep signal is effectively offline. This isn't a feeling. It's a mechanical failure. And it's why you can't just relax your way out of that 3 a.m. Heart-pounding panic. But why does this one missing key throw your entire system into such chaos? That has to do with another hormone, the one everyone just calls stress. This is also where the story gets personal for me. I was a doctor. I should have known. But I went through this myself at 52, and I still remember the exact morning, standing at my own kitchen sink before the sun was up, feeling that vibration, that internal hum of anxiety that had no name and no cause. And all I could think was, what is wrong with me? What I didn't connect then was the direct relationship between progesterone and cortisol. Progesterone acts as a buffer. It helps keep your body's main stress hormone, cortisol, in check. When progesterone disappears, that buffer is gone. Your HPA axis, your body's central stress response system, can get stuck in the on position. So that anxiety you feel isn't just in your head, it's a body-wide state of emergency fueled by unregulated cortisol. That is not aging. That is a hormone shift nobody explained to you. And here is where all the pieces lock together to create that overwhelming feeling of your body becoming a stranger. It's not just the missing progesterone and the runaway cortisol. It's the fact that estrogen receptors, which help regulate everything from your mood to your metabolism, exist in over 400 tissues in your body, and most of them are going dark. It's that your testosterone, critical for your energy and sense of self, has likely dropped by half since you were 40, yet it's almost never tested in women. In 30 years of practice, I have seen this exact pattern thousands of times. A woman comes into my office convinced she has 5 different unrelated problems: insomnia, anxiety, weight gain, brain fog, zero libido. She doesn't. She has one systemic issue that has been catastrophically ignored. Now, let's walk through the clinical reality of what this collapse looks like, step by step, number by undeniable number. All right. So let's walk through the clinical reality of what this looks like, number by undeniable number. That cortisol flooding your system in the middle of the night doesn't just wake you up. It fundamentally changes how you sleep. It actively suppresses your deep, restorative sleep stages and traps you in a shallow, anxious, light sleep. It's why you can wake up after 7 hours and feel like you haven't slept at all. At the same time, that cortisol is sending a powerful signal to your body to store energy, specifically to store it as visceral fat right around your middle. That's why over 1/3 of the weight gain a woman experiences in the first 3 years after her last period is driven by this exact hormonal shift, not by a sudden change in her diet or exercise. It's a survival mechanism your body is triggering for a famine that doesn't exist. That metabolic chaos only accelerates from there. Within the first 5 years of postmenopause, a woman's risk for developing insulin resistance can increase by as much as 15%, completely independent of her weight. Even if your weight doesn't change, the way your body handles sugar does. The healthy meal you've eaten for years suddenly has a different effect. Your cells become numb to insulin's signal, which leaves more sugar in your bloodstream and tells your body to store more fat. So many women feel betrayed by their own bodies here. They eat less, exercise more, and still gain weight. You are not doing anything wrong. Your metabolism is responding to a new set of instructions nobody gave you a copy of. I had a patient last month, Carolyn. She was 56, a successful architect, and she came in looking exhausted. "I feel like I'm slowly being erased," she said. The person I was, sharp, calm, on top of things, she's just gone. She was convinced she was developing early-onset dementia. I didn't send her for cognitive tests. I drew a diagram and explained the allopregnanolone GABA connection, how the loss of that calming molecule was leaving her brain in a state of constant low-grade static. She started to cry, not from sadness, but relief. So I'm not disappearing. My brain is just starving. While you manage the fog, your body deals with another silent crisis. Progesterone signals the osteoblasts, your bone-building cells, to get to work. When you lose it, that signal goes quiet. A woman can lose up to 20% of her total bone density in the first 5 to 7 years after her final period. A decade of skeletal aging compressed into a few years. Completely silent until the day you trip over a curb you would have easily recovered from at 45 and end up with a fracture. It was never just one thing. It's a cascade. The neurochemical deficit that steals your sleep drives up cortisol, which remodels your metabolism and stores fat, while the architecture of your bones is being quietly dismantled. And you're standing in the middle of this physiological storm, being told to try a meditation app or just power through it. That advice is insulting. It ignores the systemic collapse actually taking place. This is the moment that breaks so many women. The year you hired the personal trainer, went gluten-free, bought the high-end mattress, and the scale doesn't budge, the anxiety is still there. You start to think, it must be me. I must be fundamentally broken. What you're feeling isn't the failure of your efforts. It is the proof of your physiology. Your body isn't ignoring your hard work. It is screaming for a raw material it no longer has. That stubborn weight, that hum of anxiety, that is not aging. That is a hormone shift nobody explained to you. That realization, when it lands, is devastating. It's the quiet, furious clarity that you've spent years blaming yourself for, a game that was rigged from the start. All the energy spent trying to fix yourself, all the shame, it was based on a lie of omission. You are not crazy. You are not alone. There are millions of women lying awake at 3 a.m., asking the same question. Nothing is wrong with you. Your body has been profoundly, systematically ignored, and that silence was always optional. So what happens if you do nothing? In the first 1 to 3 years, the system digs in deeper. Hot flashes intensify. Sleep deprivation becomes a cumulative debt, eroding cognitive sharpness, mood, patience. The irritability and brain fog strain your relationships. You withdraw, and the self-blame deepens. Every month, you become more convinced the problem isn't the silence, it's you. In the 3 to 10-year window, the invisible consequences calcify. Bone density loss accelerates in that critical window after your final period. Your cardiovascular protection is gone, and heart disease risk begins its silent climb. Genitourinary syndrome of menopause becomes chronic and progressive. It never resolves on its own. The cognitive symptoms become so consistent they alarm your family. You start to fear your own mind. If this goes on for 10, 20, 30 years, the long-term data is not forgiving. 1 in 2 women over 50 will suffer a fracture due to osteoporosis. The loss of neuroprotective hormones is being researched for connection to higher dementia risk. And cardiovascular disease becomes the leading killer of women over 60. Decades of suffering inside chronic inflammation and metabolic chaos, all because of a silence that was always optional. Right now, up to 70% of women report anxiety during this transition. Depression rates can double in perimenopause. And underneath it all is that profound isolation, the feeling that you're the only one struggling. Share your story below. Which consequence are you living with right now? The one nobody warned you was coming? What you're experiencing is not personal failure. This is inherited silence with a measurable physical cost. It's the physiological result of a system designed to ignore you. You were told this was just aging, something to endure. It's not. It's a specific set of clinical consequences from a hormonal deficiency identified decades ago. Once you see that, you can never unsee it. You understand the mechanism. You see the cascade. Your suffering was never a personal failing. It was a physiological event inside a system that chose to look away. This is the moment the self-blame stops. You were never told the truth. All those years chasing remedies, the supplements, the restrictive diets, the apps that promised peace, were spent solving the wrong problem. You were looking for a problem in your willpower when the issue was always in your chemistry. That clarity gives you a new kind of power, not to demand a specific pill, but to start a different conversation. The question is no longer, "What's wrong with me?" It's, "Doctor, we've discussed estrogen, but what is your clinical philosophy on the neurological and systemic benefits of bioidentical progesterone for my sleep and anxiety, completely independent of my uterus?" You are no longer a woman with a list of complaints. You are a woman who finally has the language for what is happening inside her own body. This knowledge isn't a comfort, it's a tool. How many years have you spent blaming your personality for what was always your physiology? How many nights did you lie awake, convinced you were broken, when you were simply experiencing a neurochemical deficit nobody told you about? You weren't losing your mind. You were losing a key neurosteroid, and the silence was so complete that no one in your life had the language to explain the difference. Tell me in the comments what you needed to hear today, because knowing what is happening is only the first half of the battle. The next is finding someone who will actually listen. The silence ends in this room with this understanding. It ends with you refusing to accept that anxiety, insomnia, and a feeling of being erased are just a normal part of getting over. But that silence has allies. It lives on in outdated textbooks and in undertrained clinicians. So now that you know the what and the why, the next critical step is learning how to navigate a system that still hasn't caught up. That's why in the next conversation we have, we are going to expose the 5 specific red flags that tell you within minutes that your doctor does not understand modern menopause care. Take care of yourself. I will see you in the next one.